Hey everybody, today I'm talking to someone I've wanted to talk to for quite a while now. It's Ben O'Brien, also known as Ben the Illustrator. Hi Ben.
Hi there, James. Thanks a lot for having me on. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Ben. So I started. Let's go back. Before illustration, I studied animation. This was late 90s. I was very into music videos and kind of it was early days of web stuff, flash animation, and that kind of thing. So I was working in animation. I did about a year or so working on music videos and a few other kind of sort of I don't know, experimental things, I suppose. Um, and it was going well, and I had collaborated with quite a few people, and there was a few of us decided to start a studio. So we started an animation studio, and that was about 2002, I think, by then. And we were doing web stuff. We were doing some design. We were also like designing T-shirts and flyers and anything we could kind of like play around with. And as we kind of grew, which is quite quick, we were working on kind of the biggest project was we were working on an animated TV series for CBeebies, so a kids thing, and it was really
Okay.
fun. It was quite creative and stuff. And so, but within our studio, I we had lots of freelance. There was three of us, like the core of the studio. We had lots of freelancers that did the animation work, and I sort of realised after a while that firstly I wasn't animating anything anymore, and but all I really cared about was how things looked. Like that, I was far more passionate about how things looked than how I'd make something move. Um, and then I kind of realised that it wasn't animation wasn't what I wanted to be doing. It was illustration really, because I've been doing little jobs on the side, illustration jobs, and that's what I was excited about. I kind of leave our studio and I'll go home and be excited to work on the illustration work, not the not within the animation studio. So we kind of disbanded the studio a little bit, and I went solo and became because within the studio I was doing a bit of project management, a bit of creative direction, and all sorts. And I kind of realised that I didn't really like having all these different jobs. I just wanted to be an illustrator, hence the name Ben the Illustrator. So it was kind of like really simple, and I thought, okay, that's good, and I'll kind of like rebrand myself. And having been working in a studio and that kind of thing, always working with other people before then, and so that was 2005, I think, and yeah, and that's been it since then, really. So I've
Branding
kind of moved
yourself
around
as
a little bit, but sorry,
branding
go on.
yourself as Ben the Illustrator was a masterstroke in like personal
yeah,
marketing, I think, because
yeah,
I've been aware of you for a long time. You know, the name
mm,
has been around. Yeah, you're like
yeah,
a mainstay of the illustration
right.
community at this point.
Well, I mean, that's lovely to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was as much like for my own mind, really. It felt really clear. Like that's after kind of like sort of working on like little TV projects and music videos and all this kind of stuff. I kind of and also running a studio. You'd end up doing also the bookkeeping and everything else, and like just communicating with freelancers. Everything was just too much for me, and I kind of like things to be quite clean and clear and simple in a way. And so having that focus of just saying, right, I'm Ben the Illustrator, that will do me fine, kind of thing. I liked it, sort of thing. Yeah, it's always worked. I'm still Ben the Illustrator.
But you do quite a lot more than just that now, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so I mean, as it is like right now, in the past couple of years, I've kind of taken on quite a bit more. So I've got a second portfolio now, which I call Ben Draws, which is a different illustration style. I also co-manage a gallery, working as the curator, which actually that's why there's kind of big paintings behind us because I'm in my studio and the gallery's next door. Um, so I do that with a few friends. Those of us that are in the studio co-run it together. Um, yeah, and I do some mentoring, um, and kind of anything else that I feel pretty much always illustration related, except necessarily, so not always the gallery stuff. But yeah, I like to kind of like I don't know, get involved in things, I suppose.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's a great way to be. Um, you also you also do the Illustrator survey. How
Mm.
frequently do you do that?
So I started doing it 2016, 2017, and then I was doing it annually, and then with the pandemic, I decided I'd skip a year because any statistics from the 3 or 4 surveys before then would be completely skewed with kind of like
Yeah,
how things have been during the pandemic.
that makes
And
sense.
I was trying to gauge um, doing the survey annually. I was trying to gauge statistics over time, so trying to work out how things are growing over 5 years, sort of thing. And so to have one year where everything would be different felt like it would kind of like um, confuse the patterns, if you like, in the data. So I didn't do it for the year 2020, and then I ended up not doing it for 2021 either. But hopefully we're going to be doing it again next year. I've done kind of little bits of things, kind of smaller surveys, or I've kind of helped other people out with other surveys in the industry. But that main survey, um, yeah, it's been 5 years or so since it started. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and then next year we'll have another kind of big round on it, and it's kind of going to be slightly different this time round. I'm working with Lisa Maltby, who's a brilliant illustrator. So she ran a pricing survey a few years ago, and we've chatted about it a lot. And her pricing survey was a lot deeper on that side of things than mine ever was. So we decided we'd kind of like bring both surveys together and work collaboratively on a new one. So it should be bigger and better than either of our surveys from before. And yeah, so we'll be coming back with that next year.
Yeah, great. Well, I'll link to both surveys in the description of this video.
Mm.
But for anyone that's not aware, uh, could you just give us a kind of bullet points of what the survey is and what it's about and who it's for?
So I'd say it's a general illustrators sort of survey. It's not focused on any particular things. It's got 4 or 5 kind of areas. So pricing, um, what is there? Let me have a little look. Diversity, um, money, that kind of thing. Self promotion. So and I was always trying to get the right questions that didn't direct the results in a particular way. Like I had to kind of step back from it a little bit about things where I think there might be issues, if you like, or what I have an issue with, because it's far, the industry or the community is far broader than, me and kind of my peers of my age, kind of thing. Um, so I try and target it at anyone from someone who's literally just graduated this year to someone who's kind of in their 60s or 70s looking towards retirement, having worked in illustration for decades. Um, and it was all about, the reason I started it was because I realized that there's loads of great communities and there's loads of great like social media and forums or whatever with everyone chatting, but each one felt a bit like a bubble. And then I kind of realized that the people I was talking to were in this pretty much the same kind of community as me, and only every now and again would I meet someone who's an illustrator working full time but having a completely different experience. And then I kind of realized that basically we're all living in different bubbles. There's kind of like there could be a London bubble, and there could be maybe a Manchester bubble, but there's also like children's publishing bubbles and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And so I've realized there was no kind of broad idea of how the industry's doing that could really kind of like help us all and support us all. So yeah, so that's where it came from, and it's been really good. I mean, people have always been wanting to get involved in it, and we've had lots of great support. It's kind of gone to a point where it's led the AOI on what they're kind of lobbying for and where they're realizing where the issues are, and that's kind of what we have to be taken to government. Um, and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I really like it. It takes up a lot of work, and it's quite a responsibility. It can be quite a stress at times, but it's a great thing to be part of. And I mean, thankfully, kind of built up. There's a few people around it that are kind of always keen to get involved. So I'm not kind of like carried it on my shoulders. When I did the first one, I did it all myself, and I didn't even really tell people that it was happening until I put it out there. But it's a lot better working doing it more collaboratively now.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's an enormous amount of work. Um, how are you spreading the survey to, you know, the wider world?
Well, it's always okay. Next year's survey is going to be slightly different in that we might just focus on the UK. We might have a kind of a separate, maybe sub survey that would look at the rest of the world. But it became really difficult because if half the people who answer the survey are in the UK and 40% are in America and the other 10% are dotted around the world, then some of those people's results are going to be completely different to other people's. And we started to realize that kind of like a new illustrator in the Philippines is going to be part of a very different industry, a very different community to, you know, a few thousand people in the UK that answer the survey. So I think the results will be a lot more useful for us in the UK to have it focused in the UK. And then we'll kind of work out in time how we can maybe do smaller surveys for parts of regions of the world or something like that. That's something we need to work on. But it's kind of done its homework as far as getting the results out there. So all I've had to, I mean, basically through Twitter and that kind of thing, really. When I've published the results, they get picked up, people show an interest. It's always been supported by people like It's Nice That and Creative Review. I've always shared the results and run articles about it. So it's kind of once I publish the result, it kind of does its own thing of getting out there, kind of just reaches everybody.
Yeah, yeah. We're very lucky in the UK to have so many great resources. The survey being one, the AOI being another. Even in America, I don't think they have what we have here. You know, I mean, they've got the Society of Artists Age. No, hang on. So sorry, the Society of Illustrators. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But you know, it's different. It's a different league to the AOI, I think, and I'm not aware of too many other organisations around the world that kind of support this kind of survey of their community.
Yeah. You know. No, I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to get into some of the stats in a little while, but I wonder if maybe you could tell us a little bit about your illustration career now. You mentioned that you'd started a new portfolio, changed style, or added a style, let's say. How's that going?
Yeah, it's going well, actually. It wasn't intended. I wasn't kind of looking for something new. It was essentially a friend of mine who I work with now and again. He's a creative director. He's involved with a new food brand, like a seaweed snack from Copenhagen, and he had a vision of how the packaging was going to look, and he sourced kind of like we put together a mood board essentially of illustration and that kind of thing. And then he came to me and he said, right, I need an illustrator who can do this kind of thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's really cool. And I recommended a load of people, and some of them weren't available. The guy who was kind of like the top choice, annoyingly, had already worked on a seaweed snack product recently, and so it was like conflict of interest. He had to turn it down. Yeah, and so my friend was kind of left. You know, he didn't really have anything, and he said, well, you know, is there no way you could do this? And I was like, well, it's not what I do. It's not how I draw. Like, it's more hand drawn kind of thing, or line drawn. And he said, oh, go on, give it a go. And so I did. I mean, I had a go. And at first it was kind of like I was just kind of copying the mood board. It wasn't really coming naturally, sort of thing. But then I kind of stuck at it. Only for a few weeks, perhaps. I kind of set it as a little bit of a hobby. Can I do it? And then I kind of got to a point where I realised that I can do it, sort of thing. And I kind of found a style somewhere between how I kind of sketched something out and the style that they wanted. And then I kind of worked out a kind of a middle ground where it would happen. It started with the noses. It's when I figured out how to draw a nose in this new style, I could build the face around it, sort of thing. And it's like the type of nose that I would never illustrate in my normal way of doing things.
Right.
So nowadays, I mean, still now that's been a couple of years now that I've been playing around with this style, and I still start with the nose if I'm doing something. So I'll draw a nose and then I'll kind of like sketch the face around it. Um,
That's a good idea. Maybe I'll try that. Maybe I'll
yeah,
try
yeah,
starting with the nose.
yeah, and yeah, and it's going really well. And I kind of, work really well. It's on the packaging now. I still work with my friend on his brand, and yeah, and I managed to kind of build up a bit of a portfolio and start selling myself in that area. But the style is very different to my normal work, so I had to kind of give it a completely different. They're on the same website, but they're in different sections. But I had to kind of give it a different name. I didn't want to say Ben the Illustrator doing something something something.
Mm.
Um, so I just thought I'll go for Ben Draws. It's nice and simple, and yeah, and the two sit. They look different, but they sit alongside each other on my website. Kind of, there's two portfolios within the one site now.
Yeah. So you're very established at this point. This channel is really aimed at new illustrators that are just starting out their career. What do you think about newer illustrators having more than one style right from the start?
I'm not sure about it. I think it was easy for me. In fact, it was quite exciting for me to have a new style and kind of sell myself all over again, like almost starting from scratch. Felt really nice and kind of refreshing. And then being able to think about how does this style work? Where could this style go? What could I be doing with this style in a few years' time? And all that kind of stuff. And so I could only do it successfully the second time because I've already done it the first time, and because also my kind of Ben the Illustrator work is established, and I get commissions and that kind of thing. So I had it. I've always got that. If the Ben Draws work didn't pick up, it wouldn't have mattered because I've already
Got
got
a safety
my
net.
illustration work. Yeah, and but personally, I think if you're making a name for yourself, it's good to have a defined style kind of thing. It's just some kind of thread that runs through your portfolio. I think you've got to be flexible. So people, I mean, I know there's always illustrators that manage to build a career doing one specific thing, um, but generally, I think if you're starting out, it's best to have some flexibility, not to your style, but to kind of what you do, sort of thing. Whether it's kind of scenes or figures or whatever, um, just to know that, so the clients know that you can be adaptable and that kind of thing.
Mm.
But yeah, I generally think like a defined style is better. You very rarely see kind of jack of all trades illustrators with a very varied portfolio really kind of building anything substantial from it, I feel.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
they don't get well known, do they?
no.
Because by the nature of them changing styles all the time, they're not memorable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you do mentoring. I imagine you've done your fair share
Hmm.
of portfolio reviews and that kind of thing over the years. Um, do you have any particular advice that you'd care to share for new illustrators, straight out of college this year?
Um, I think so. I always say that you got to show your work, like make things and show people is kind of what I say. Because, and I do see this sometimes with students. Like you could be the greatest illustrator, you could be an incredible artist, but if no one's seen your work, then literally you won't make a penny out of it. If no one's seeing it, then you can't just make it and then leave it somewhere. It's not going to happen for you. So you've got to tell people about it. You've got to share your work however you can. Um, I think sort of targeting where you want to go, whether it's specific industries or specific clients or art directors or whatever, is a really good idea. I don't think you can be too vague about things. I always think it's good to kind of consider where your passions are or like what your interests are, and like whether or not you can build an illustration career in that kind of world, if you like. So if you're really into sport, then there's editorial work, perhaps there's working with teams on merchandise or whatever it might be. If you're into fashion, then there's always fashion illustration. and that kind of thing. So it's kind of figuring out what kind of realm you want to work within and where your interests and passions are and that kind of thing. Um, I think having a kind of
The,
a
well,
focused portfolio. Sorry.
the flexibility you mentioned earlier is, I
Mm,
would agree, is really important, because even if you do identify that area that you really want to get into, sports or fashion or whatever,
mm.
in the early days, if you want to make money, you've kind of got to take
Yeah.
what you can get at the start,
Yeah.
right? You
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
just to get by.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, you got to. There's always and there's always things like that where the thing that you consider to be really cool might not be kind of like lucrative. Do you know what I mean? It might not be an area with lots of money. And like I always remember that an old friend of mine was what was it? He was kind of like really into maybe movies or something at the time, and he wasn't kind of like getting any work from that kind of industry, from the movie magazines or anything like that. And then he got a commission from, I think it was Farmers Monthly or something like that. And he
Right.
had no association with farming whatsoever. He hadn't considered it, but he worked for them for years. And it was, they had good budgets, they had really good art directors, and it was secure. He'd do like a couple of illustrations a month or something like that. And
Yeah.
2 or 3 years down the line, he was like, if I'd known that in the first place, I would have gone to Farmers Weekly or whatever it was, Farming Monthly or something, and sold myself to them in the first place, kind of thing. Because there's stable work, even if it's not the dream job or whatever. And so being flexible and being open to those other things that might come your way is, you know, how you kind of build things up, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Absolutely. Do you think, well, when I went to university and studied illustration, my parents were
Mm.
like pretty down on the whole idea. They didn't really know what it was or anything. Do you think illustration is more of a respected and well understood profession now?
Uh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more illustration around, sort of thing, than there was kind of 20 years ago or something. Um, I feel I don't know if people know illustrators. Like, do the public know names of illustrators?
I mean, there's
I'm
a
not
few kind
sure.
of household names, isn't there? But they're mostly
Yeah,
like children's book
but
illustrators.
yeah, that's very true.
Really.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Um, I feel like it is. I don't know if I have good examples why, but I feel like it is more respected. I know
Yeah.
kind of like because graphic design feels, like people will understand graphic design now because of the internet and that kind of thing, and people can kind of do these things, learn it themselves nowadays and that kind of thing. So more people, it feels more accessible, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I still have a problem with illustration that if I say I'm an illustrator, people say, "Oh, children's books," kind of thing. It's like, well, no, I haven't done children. I've got nothing against children's book at all. It's amazing, but that's not the only thing illustrators do. And I've worked on one children's book, and it's not a big part of my career. But
If you're ever having a
yeah,
conversation with somebody out in a public space, you can more or less just turn around and point at an illustration wherever you are these days. You know,
yeah,
it's all over
yeah,
the
yeah,
place,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I guess people don't really realize it unless they're in the club, so to speak.
mm, yeah. No, you're right.
Um, can I ask you how over the years how you've marketed yourself? I mentioned earlier that naming yourself Ben the Illustrator was pretty
Mm.
genius, because it's just so clear, very memorable, all that. But you must have experimented with lots of different ways to sell your work and get your work out there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I do think I have to say it's a lot easier now than it used to be because of the internet, essentially. So when I was starting out, we had to get cards printed and we had to send them to everybody and that kind of thing. Um, I mean, it's a long time since I've done that, really. Um, but I think I try and do things that are not necessarily free, but easy to do, but kind of like original, if you like. So there was a while where I was I'd done a couple of projects with a friend of mine, Matt Booth. He's a kind of a web designer from Manchester. And then I had an idea. I don't remember where I was, but you know those billboards, like real life billboards, and it's like triangles and they change. So this is before digital billboards. Do
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it would have a
like
poster on it.
prisms that just turn around.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes.
And so you'd have like three different poster billboards, and it would rotate between the things.
Mm.
I saw one of them, and I thought, oh, that's quite a cool idea. Kind of, it's kind of like the way they change, because quite often they'd go across the poster. They'd change one by one.
Yeah.
And so I worked with Matt Booth, and we made a digital billboard. And so it was basically a website, and then I could just add I could upload 3 images. I did it seasonally. Yeah, we did it 3 or 4 times a year. And then so all my newest work would be on this digital billboard, and then my website would link through to it, or I'd email a link to people, and so they'd go online. I mean, now you have digital billboards, but like in the street or Piccadilly Circus or whatever,
Yeah.
but you didn't then. So it felt kind of genius to have like a digital billboard. Oh yeah, wow, amazing.
Yeah, it's
And
great. Did you build that in like Flash or something?
I have no
How
idea
long
how he
ago
built
was
it.
it?
It was about, what would it have been, about 10, 12 years ago, I think. It may have been Flash. Yeah, I don't know.
That
Yeah,
sounds like
yeah.
great.
I like working with other people, so I don't have to get my head around that kind of stuff.
Fine. Yeah. So now you're marketing Ben Draws.
Mm.
What are you doing differently than you did? I mean, I guess it's going to be a big list, but what are you doing differently now with your new style?
Well, I'm marketing it to different people. So there's a lot of magazines that I've always liked, but never would have been able to kind of get my work in there, sort of thing. And now I've got a style that perhaps works better. So I'm kind of marketing it to different people now. Um, I'm trying to produce more kind of topical work, which isn't something that I'd done much of before. Um, Still, it's one of those things. I'd love to be kind of like doing an illustration every day, but I don't really get the time, sort of thing, to kind of build up a portfolio of topical work, if you like. But because my kind of Ben the Illustrator work never really suited doing anything kind of topical or kind of news like. I don't know really. I'm trying to think how I'm marketing it differently.
Well, you mentioned
It feels
printing.
like, sorry.
You mentioned printing cards earlier. You know, that's something that I do see occasionally. I still get postcards and prints and things sent to
Mm.
the agency, and I think you know, until you're making money and your style has been validated, I don't think it makes sense to spend your money on getting expensive items printed. Like you say, it's a lot easier these days. You can just do whatever you want online and show
Yeah.
it to far more people for a fraction of the cost
Mm.
and effort, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always been a big kind of supporter of kind of cold emailing people. You know, find the right person, make sure you got the right email address and that kind of thing. But you know, if I ever think of someone I'd like to work with, or if I see something, then I'll give them an email and I'll just say hello and link to my portfolio and that kind of thing. I try not to do kind of like, you know, blanket emails to thousands of people or anything like that. But you know, every few months, kind of emailing, kind of, I don't know, 20 to 40 people. You know, make a nice concise email, a link to on my website. You know, be polite, be friendly, and that kind of thing, and just kind of get them sent, kind of thing. I've always been a kind of a big supporter of doing that, because I mean, it costs nothing. You know, a bit of research, you know, a bit of time on LinkedIn, making sure you got the right person's name and that kind of thing, or going in WH Smith and looking in the magazines or whatever it takes. But
Do you ever find
I've always
yourself
found it's worth it.
guessing? Do you ever find yourself guessing at people's email addresses?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's that thing, you know, first name, last name, initial, last name, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
if you got a kind of a system, and I think you've got to make sure that people don't um, like don't know that you're emailing loads of people at a time, kind of thing. Like it doesn't want to feel like spammy or anything like that. Um, but you have to, let them think, or show them that you want to contact them, you want to work with that person. It's not about just trying your luck with hundreds of people.
If you could put an approximate number on it, what would you say your response rate is like as an already established illustrator?
When I do emails like that,
Yeah, when you do your cold emails.
I would say I maybe get replies from about half,
It's pretty good.
which I think is quite good. And commissions, I there has been commissions. I couldn't guarantee that I get commission every time I did it, kind of thing. But I'd like to say maybe, I don't know, if I sent 40 emails, I might get one or two commissions, kind of thing. I know that whenever I have, it's always seemed like, oh, it's like, it'll be like a magazine job or something. And they'll be like, oh, actually, I do have something. Are you available this week, next week, or whatever? And that, I mean, that's just luck. If I'd emailed them a week or two later, I wouldn't have got those commissions. But so there can be an element of luck in it.
Something I was
I think
thinking
it's also
about.
you got to remember not to be annoying is a big thing. Like don't email the same person monthly, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, related to that, something I was thinking about just this week was that the first email you send to somebody, the first cold introduction email is not necessarily the important email, because the chances of you getting a job from that first email are pretty slim.
Mm.
But staying in regular contact with people is going to be more important, because you'll become familiar to the person that you're emailing. So, how
Yeah.
frequently would you email somebody that you didn't know?
Um, I mean, possibly once a year. It might, it could be, or maybe twice a year, every 6 months or so. I have a kind of a contact list, and I put on a spreadsheet, and I'll put at the top when I'm emailing, sort of things, October, 2022 or whatever. And anyone that I've emailed, I'll make a note so that I know not to email them again if I do a couple more emails in January or something like that. But um, so generally, it wouldn't be no more than twice a year, kind of thing.
Okay.
A lot of the people that I'm emailing are previous clients, sort of thing. So I know that's obviously an advantage of having been working for 15 years odd, is that I've kind of got my kind of like client list of people I've already worked with. So I'm just kind of reminding them and kind of keeping in touch with them. And as yet, no one's ever complained. No one's ever, oh, please stop emailing me, and that kind of thing. So it's always kind of been okay. And then sometimes there is kind of, there's some clients that I work with every 3 or 4 years or something. And maybe if I didn't keep in touch with them once or twice a year, those commissions might not have happened, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess sometimes when I'm speaking to illustrators, I would say no more than every 3 months, quarterly. Like for you, it's different because I guess you're busy, you've got a lot going on. But if you're a new illustrator with no other projects,
Mm.
waiting a year, 6 months is it's a long time, right?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Mm. You've been you've been working a long time, and this is a potentially difficult question to answer. So, but illustrations has been booming for the last 5 years at least. Things have been going really well, but the economy is not in great shape at the moment.
Mm.
And you possibly remember the last time we had a recession. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on what might happen to the illustration industry if things go south.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, this is like yeah, I've worked for 15 years, and I've kind of always said that like surviving is like my kind of career highlight is the fact that I'm still doing it, that I've survived, sort of thing. But my like income has fluctuated massively. It still does. It's never, it can still be unstable. It can still have, very dodgy months now and again, or a few months in a row that isn't quite up to scratch. Um, I mean, yeah, I'm just lucky that I've kind of got through, and I've managed to kind of always kind of find something to keep it going. Um, I don't know. It's so hard. And in the UK at the minute, it feels really hard. Um, so, kind of personally, I'm considering how to kind of sell myself a lot more in the States, um, because there's still budgets there. They even like I think I've always had quite a few um, clients in the States, so I've got an agent in the States. And when Trump came in, I was really worried that everything was going to go. That was going to be, my work from the States wouldn't have would come to an end somehow. I imagined the economy was going to crash and everything, but it didn't. It kept going. My agent says that it was caricatures of Donald Trump that kept the industry going, sort of thing.
Yeah, we did a fair share of those.
Yeah. So at the moment, with our economy not being so good, and a lot of people being a bit concerned about their budgets, and smaller companies not having the budgets. Personally, I'm kind of thinking or hoping that I can, look to the States and sell myself some more. It does worry me. I worry about people kind of coming out of university or going freelance or whatever in the current climate. I kind of, it's going to be a big part of when we do the survey next year on how we can seek answers and see how people are getting on and that kind of thing. But like you say, the industry's or illustration as a whole has been booming. So hopefully this current period will be easier than previous recessions.
Yeah, you'd hope.
Yeah.
I guess
So yeah.
from a magazine's point of view, a commissioned illustration is kind of a luxury item.
Mm.
When they could potentially, if the people upstairs say you got to cut your budget by 25% or whatever, the luxury items are going to go, and it's going to be, maybe stock photos and things like that. There are cheaper ways to get a magazine published. So yeah, I mean, it's a possibility, isn't it? But these things don't last forever. So for people that have graduated recently, there's potential for the industry to slow down a little bit, but there's still loads and loads of illustration graduates competing. So I guess it's just about keeping your hand in and weathering the storm if it does come to pass.
Yeah, definitely. I think also, looking to like if magazine publishing is struggling, and I do far less editorial than I used to do, and a lot of the magazines that I thought would be there forever aren't there anymore. But there's newer areas, kind of thing. Animation. The animation industry is huge. Because of like streaming and that kind of thing, and so there's illustration work in those industries. Obviously, there's a lot more kind of online things, resources or whatever, businesses, social media and everything. We didn't have any of that 10 years ago to go and work for those kind of things. And I think illustration plays kind of a massive part online. A lot of businesses, use Illustrator, and startups up to corporates, finding that illustration can kind of simplify anything, kind of thing online. So kind of what if someone wants to explain what their production process is, then they can use illustration, kind of thing. I worked with a company recently that do reusable takeaway packaging. So they're in San Francisco, I think, And so your takeaway comes and it comes in like a proper metal dish sort of thing. And then you go on an app and you leave it outside your front door the next morning, and someone comes by and they pick it up, wash it, and it goes back to the restaurants, sort of thing. And so, like, that's a very kind of new process. No one's ever done that before, kind of thing. And so I was working with them because they were like, well, the best way to explain that process of going on the app and everything else is done by illustration, sort of thing. They
Yeah.
didn't have the budget to do like a film, like a fully a kind of TV ad or complete video. So it only took kind of, I don't know, 5 to 8 illustrations to explain every what the process is for the restaurants, what the process is for the customers, and that kind of thing. And that's where I'm seeing a lot. There's a lot of illustration. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of illustration, that kind of world at the minute, kind
Yeah.
of working for businesses on. Yeah,
You look at any kind of tech company online, like I don't know, Slack, Dropbox,
yeah,
all that kind of thing. They're all using illustration on their website to kind of explain things, like you're saying, but also to give them a friendly face. If it's kind of
yeah,
boring tech, not that Dropbox or Slack are boring necessarily, but illustration just gives them a friendly, approachable
yeah, yeah,
position.
absolutely. And because tech's used by everyone. I mean, yeah, tech used to be used by tech people. Do you know what I mean? But nowadays, tech's used by everybody, all ages, and all backgrounds. And so, these companies they can't just sell themselves with kind of like boring kind of corporate speak or tech speak or jargon anymore. It's got to be affable and it's got to be eye catching. And yeah, illustration's playing a good part in that.
Yeah, I agree. um, I'd like to move on to some of the survey stats, if that's
Mm,
okay. And I made a note of some
yeah.
today that I'd like to talk to you about. So, 34% of your participants say that they don't feel supported with resources and advice. What do you suggest they do?
Um, so I think that AOI is really good. Um, there's lots of advice there. There's also perhaps more support than people realize, if you need to contact them and that kind of thing. There is a lot of resources, but I understand that obviously you have to pay for, membership does cost and that kind of thing. Um, I think there's a lot of good kind of online, whether magazines or blogs or whatever you call them, sites like Creative Boom that
Mm-hmm.
used to be perhaps a bit more about kind of just showing inspirational projects and just like look at this cool work, which is amazing, which is great. But they're kind of like turning around a little bit more to have a kind of a more sensitive approach, I feel, and giving more kind of advice and putting articles together, asking illustrators for their thoughts on an issue or for their tips and that kind of thing. So I think that's really good. I also think there's a lot of power in um, kind of joining together with people at your level, or your whether it's your age or your however long experienced you've been or whatever, and whether it's like a WhatsApp group or a Slack group or whatever, and just bring some people together just to have something there, like a support group. Even if you all feel like you don't know what you're doing, you'll be a lot stronger together, and you can find things, or you will know things. You'll know something someone else doesn't know, and when they ask, oh, I don't know what to do about this, they'll be like, oh, actually, I do know that. I've done that, and someone will have advice back for you. Um, I'm in a brilliant WhatsApp group, and it's basically, I don't know, there's about 6 of us illustrators. We're not necessarily all like best friends. We don't all know each other personally. We've not all met in real life, but we're just kind of all at the same stages of our career. And at any time, you can post something on there and say, oh, what do you think about this? Or I don't know how to do this or whatever. And because we're all at the same point, there's no judgment. There's nothing embarrassing to say, oh, I don't know how to negotiate this price or whatever it is, or taxes, or some
Yeah.
technical thing. How do you do this in Illustrator or whatever it is? Um, and so it's kind of like always having things like that. There's like create your own community sort of thing. Um, and yeah, it makes for a lot better, kind of like a stronger business, I think, to have that kind of connection with people.
That
And
sounds great.
and
Like a little
yeah,
support group. I,
yeah,
s- I
absolutely,
spoke
yeah.
to I spoke to a guy that works in a studio with some other illustrators, and he was telling me that they set each other briefs. You know, they have like group briefs
Okay,
for the studio, so they
yeah,
set each other projects and then critique critique them at the end
mm,
of the week. I thought that was a really nice way to do things.
that's
Good
cool. Yeah,
practice.
that's a great thing to do. Yeah, yeah, great idea.
Yeah. So the AOI community, um, there are a few online resources. The Agents for Change is a new one. I would say the Illustrator's Guide, my channel, that's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
But also, I want to mention the Australian founded agency Jackie Winter. I don't know how
Mm.
familiar you are with them,
Yeah, I know. Oh, well, I know of them. I know like they're illustrators. Yeah.
but they're doing so much interesting stuff at the moment. They put out a lot of helpful content
Mm.
for illustrators and clients. There's a website I came across a couple of weeks back called Use It or Lose It. I
Mm.
can't exactly remember what the URL is, but I'll find a link. And that's just got a load of really good information about how you should explain licensing to your clients and how copyright works, and that's really
Mm.
great. It was worth a shout out.
Yeah.
Yeah, um, there's a there's a little line in your survey that caught my eye earlier. A small number of illustrators get all the work while the majority go unnoticed, or the perception is that the majority go unnoticed.
Mm.
Isn't that true of any competitive industry?
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose it is. Um, yeah. It can be really hard. I find it. It's not any. It's not. I don't know. It doesn't always feel like the easiest industry to stick your head out or to kind of get noticed, just because there's so many people. But I kind of feel that um, once you do, or if you kind of like connect with a lot of other people, then once one person's kind of like on the way up, it brings other people with them, kind of thing. Um, but I know there's a lot of, just from comments I've had around the survey, that um, of course, like every industry, there's kind of an elite, if you like, of illustrators who can kind of, I don't know, maybe command the budgets they whatever budget they want and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And I totally understand why, and no one would turn down being in that position. Um, but I think that there's issues around it in kind of like the awards kind of fawning over these people, or if magazines constantly focus on the same people, um, and that kind of thing, because that's where you're kind of missing out on lesser known talent, kind of thing. Um, and that that some people might be producing really great work, but just not getting noticed by the kind of, not media necessarily, but kind of like the things within the industry that share this stuff. Do you know what I mean?
there's
Um,
plenty of great artists that never make any money, right? And
mm,
but I've got to think that there's a bit of a kind of a Darwinian survival of the fittest element to it. Not every illustrator that tries to be an illustrator can be super successful and rich and famous.
yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah. Mm,
there's for those elite, we can all think of a few of them, I imagine, but there's a certain element of luck to their
mm,
fame and possibly fortune, but also there's a an enormous amount of skill there as well.
oh yeah.
It's not like you can get to that point on luck alone without the skills to
Mm,
back it up. So I have to, have to be impressed, and if they're also good at marketing themselves and getting themselves out there in the press or blogs or whatever,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's good for them. It's tough for the people that are trying really hard and aren't getting anywhere, though.
yeah. I think, I mean, yeah, no, you're right. I think there's a lot of the illustrators that I know with the most success are also, they're very good at running their businesses, and they're very good at marketing. And there's always been a lot of hard work. There's always a few years at least of hard work and small jobs and low budget commissions and whatever else to get to that point. More so just to develop a style that can allow you to become an elite. Very people kind of at 18 will have an illustration style that's kind of at an elite level, let's say, um, because you learn so much just by doing it for a few years, 1, 2, 3 years, even if it's part time or even if it's unpaid, you'll develop something much more special than you could have just forced on day one, kind of thing. Um, I've forgotten what I was going to say now. What were we just saying?
We were talking about the elite
Oh,
being
yeah, sorry.
but also skilled
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's running a business and marketing yourself and all of that stuff, kind of thing. No one just gets picked up like with a golden ticket and becomes a millionaire illustrator sort of thing. Um, every one of those people will have sold themselves, gone out there and met the right people, and impressed them in whatever way, and that kind of thing. Um, yeah,
there are
you
plenty
know,
of that kind of group though that come and go. They're like flash in the
mm,
pan. They'll have a really hot style for a couple of years, and then once they've worked with all the best brands, nobody wants them anymore. So there is
yeah,
an element of that. Once you get to that elite level, how do you keep people interested? Because everybody in the world has seen your work.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I think some
Not the worst
people.
problem to have.
No, it's not. It's not. It depends. I mean, I like when people evolve. I like when people find a new thing or kind of grow into something else or take their work somewhere else, kind of thing. I think that can be very exciting. Um, it's also kind of understanding how you can build a business that would last, for a long time, kind of thing. Um, there is, yeah, you're right that, yeah, you can have a hot new style, but if it's not, you know, it can be done in a year. It could be out of fashion in a year, sort of thing. Whereas there's illustration styles that some people have worked exactly the same for 20 years, and they've got some timeless style, and it might get better. They'll get better at what they're doing,
Yeah.
but the style itself is timeless, and it will always be liked, and it will always work to sell a product or to tell a story or whatever.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so it's kind of I don't really know if when I started out I was considering how to do it forever. I don't think I was, but now I do. And now I kind of consider what I'm putting out there and how I'm marketing myself, just to ensure that I've got a business that's sustainable, um, and that I can keep supporting my family and everything.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
And you've kind of diversified into doing other things as well,
yeah,
which is kind
yeah,
of extra security.
mm, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah. So there's question 7 in the survey is it's about how long people have been in the industry, and there's a
Mm.
little comment next to the answers that says there's a big drop off after 10 years in the industry, and you've suggested that we look at it. Um, so shall we? Why do you think that is?
um, I don't know. I think a lot of it is an age thing. I think um, people, if everyone starts illustrating in their 20s, kind of thing, and it's quite easy. Most people don't have you don't have many responsibilities. you might be, renting, maybe you're not married, you don't have kids and that kind of thing. It's a lot easier to freelance, I think, and it's a bit easier to be adaptable in that way. But I think a lot of people get to a point where you gain some responsibilities in life, and maybe it's that point where freelancing isn't stable or isn't kind of the guaranteed income that you need for yourself or your family, or whatever your situation is. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people who have chosen to, that were freelancers, and in the past 10 years or whatever, have chosen to take a kind of a full-time job at a design studio, or to start their own studio, or find something completely different, just to have a kind of a guaranteed income. Also, sometimes people feel like they've done what they wanted to do as a freelancer. They've kind of achieved those kind of milestones they wanted to hit, or they've achieved all the targets, if you like. And then whereas people will find more exciting things that they can do as part of a studio, or in a maybe even a completely different career.
There's a few possibilities there. I think the family one is definitely a big one, because if you start in your early 20s, and then once you get to your mid 30s and you're having kids, you think, well, freelancing is pretty unstable. Maybe I should get something a bit more secure. That makes sense. And yeah, I know, some people will kind of move on to bigger and better things as well. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting to get your thoughts on that. Here's a question: I guess with any of the surveys that you've done, do you ever recall being particularly surprised at any of the results?
Yeah, I mean, the one that I always remember is I don't remember which year that this statistic first kind of like shocked me, but it might have been the first survey. It was the mental health. The idea that, I forget if it was 60 to 70% of people, I can't remember, claim they had, not claim, but, had mental health issues that affected their career, sort of thing. And that, I mean, that was like, my God, that's a lot of people. And that's a massive percentage, sort of thing. I mean, I've talked about it quite a lot. I've had mental health problems since for a long time, and they have affected my career at times. But I know, and I've spoken about it, and I've discussed it with other people. I've been open about it, but I never thought there'd be that much of a statistic on it, across the community, kind of thing.
Do you think there's
I guess there's certain types of people. Certain types of people that go into creative subjects that quite often also have mental health problems, or Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, you actually answered what I was going to ask, which is,
oh, sorry.
Do you think there's a kind of a correlation between people going into creative careers and mental issues, however you want to define them?
I think so. I think also there's, on the kind of the other side of it, there's creatives perhaps more likely to be open about these things. You could do these statistics in some professions, and it might say 5% of people have mental health problems, but it might just be that those professions aren't used to being honest about it, or they're not in a situation where you'd open up about something like that. And whereas creative people, I think, are a little more honest about those kinds of things, a little more sensitive or emotional, or kind of aware of these things. Maybe it can be a good thing, makes us special, or makes us open-minded to things.
I guess it most likely is the same across the board, but creative people are just more emotionally healthy and available.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, we're just about at an hour here. Do you have time for a few more?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've only got two more actually. Um,
Okay.
Question 20 and 21. This is about being confident giving estimates to clients and negotiating prices. I wonder if you had any tips on, I guess, getting comfortable with pricing and
Hmm.
as an extension to that, negotiating, because there's very little advice, very little specific advice out there about how to price your work. I mean, it's really you
Mm.
really just got to vibe it for quite a while and just see if you can
Yeah,
muddle through. And no doubt, lots of beginners are making mistakes. What do you think?
yeah, yeah, definitely. I'll be honest, I've never like pricing is my least favorite thing. I don't really enjoy it. I don't always understand it even. It's never been my strong point. But firstly, this is where you're having a community helps. Okay, if you've got a group of people and you've all done, if you're just starting out and you've all done 3 commissions and there's 6 people, and if you go on a WhatsApp group and you say, okay, what has everyone done? And if everyone listens, then you've got 18 commissions to judge things by. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And you can kind of work out, oh, okay, so those people charge that for that, those people charge that for that kind of thing. And I kind of feel like, there's no kind of strict guidelines on how illustration should be priced. Um, but you know, um, if you do something for a tech company and it's an illustration for their homepage, then another tech company should probably pay around the same kind of thing. So long as if the first budget is okay, maybe you could use that. So I always use previous commissions as a kind of an idea, a little bit of guidance on a price for the next commission kind of thing. So that generally I'm kind of pricing the same thing that I would have done previously. Um, I think um, that there's not many resources out there that say you know whatever £500 is a good price for this type of illustration, or this type of illustration should just cost £5,000 kind of thing. That we don't have that, and I don't know if it would ever even exist. I'm not sure. Um,
yeah. I just
because
happen to have this nearby. Have you ever had a look at
oh
this?
right, yeah, yeah,
This is like this is a guide for all kinds of different for designers and illustrators, but it gives you specific prices. It's aimed at the US.
right,
It's aimed at the US, so it's
mm,
all in dollars. But that's kind of a handy way to get at least some kind of anchor. But the the problem is not the problem, but every client has a different budget. Like you say, two tech
mm,
companies wanting the same thing, it's most likely going to be pretty similar. But a magazine on, let's say, something like T3 or Maxim or something that's reviewing tech products and they do a lot of advertising, they might have a decent budget, whereas something like, what did you mention earlier, Farmers Weekly,
right, yeah,
uh, most likely they're not going to have much of a budget at all. Um,
mm,
Especially, anyway. So maybe thinking about, I guess, if new illustrators are getting into editorial, thinking about how much the magazine spends on other things, or how much money they can make from advertising, could influence how you price. If you're working for a
mm,
crocheting magazine, gardening magazine, rabbit keeping magazine, you're not. They're not going to pay. They're not going to pay hardly anything. But
mm,
the big popular ones, you would think they'd pay a bit more because they've got a wider readership, more
mm,
advertising. Unfortunately, it doesn't always. It's not always the case, but
mm,
that's the best way I could think about doing it, I suppose.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's kind of, I know that a lot of people frown on kind of day rates or hour rates or that kind of thing, but I think you've got to make sure that you're making enough money for for the time you're putting into it, kind of thing. And so I've always kind of had kind of vague amounts in my head of, for a certain type of job or a certain type of client, that I'd want to be making that daily kind of thing, a certain amount. And so it's got to add up to that, or, I know I'm not doing it right kind of thing. Or, maybe the budget can, if you have like in your head what you're worth each day or whatever, in order to kind of get the salary of a year, then if someone gives you a budget, then you can work out how many days you should be spending on it, and if it's supposed to be 3 days and you end up spending 4 weeks on it, it wasn't worth it kind of thing. So I've always kind of had that as some kind of bare minimum on what I could charge for something. Is just to know that my time is going to be worthwhile, and also kind of like setting rules about how many rounds of amendments you're going to be doing, and what your process is, going from roughs to color artwork and that kind of thing. Be open and honest about that kind of thing. And I think confidence is a hard one. You can't force someone to be confident, and obviously, the more you do it, the more confident you get. But if you're typing if you're giving someone, if you're emailing what your budget would be for a project, if someone said, how much would this cost, make it sound like you're confident. If you're typing a message, it's fine. They're not looking at you in the eye. They're not judging your body language. Just make sure you're clean. You're not going, would this be okay? Is that, don't sound, just sound confident. Say, it would cost this, and I'll do this many roughs, and I'll, do a round of amendments and that kind of thing. And, tell them what your schedule is and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And sound confident, even if inside you're kind of, awkward or whatever. I mean, sometimes I still do that now. If I'm on a call with someone and they say about a cost, I'll say that I'll get back to them. They never mind. It does, it's perfectly fine, because I find it a lot easier to make it clear in an email. Also, it means that we've then got it recorded forever in the email. But I find it a lot easier, and no one minds if I say, I'll give you an email by the end of the day and I'll let you know. And they're like, okay, that's cool. Yeah. And people are respectful enough. And then you can get your numbers together and confidently put the email together and get that sent.
I really appreciate you bringing that up. That's a great point. It's because it's very easy to feel pressured into giving a price, especially if you're on a call or a Zoom or something like that. And really, the reality is there is no pressure. If somebody asks you, you don't have to reply immediately. You can just say, I'll get back to you. Yeah. That's what I do that all the time too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So related to pricing, do you find that commissioners, well, this is actually related to question 33. I can't remember exactly what the question was, but do commissioners have a good understanding of how illustration pricing works? How do you think we can explain it better?
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a funny one. I think, obviously there's some commissioners, like magazine art directors or whatever, that totally understand it. We're not kind of not talking about them in a way, because if they're commissioning an illustration a day, or one every 3 days, or 3 a day or whatever, or people who work in children's publishing, that's what they do. And so, they should have a good understanding, it's kind of their job too. But I think a lot of it is when you're working with someone who might have never commissioned an illustration before. So it could be a small business, could be a startup, and they're saying, we've got a website, we've got a logo, we want an illustration for our homepage kind of thing. And obviously they've not commissioned illustration before. It's not really something that the general public are ever really doing. And so personally, I kind of have a few emails in my drafts that I can copy and paste bits of to explain how it works kind of thing, to explain licensing and that kind of thing, to explain, the whole idea that you don't own the illustration, I'm licensing it to you kind of thing. And generally people have always been quite open to that, to understand that, and to understand that it's for a good reason. It's the best thing for both businesses to have these agreements in place, or to have an understanding on it and that kind of thing. And that they understand that, you might be looking after your own back, because you might, you can say to them, look, you can't I have to do, we have to have this set out because I don't want you to take my illustration and sell it on to someone else because, that's not fair. And they'll be like, yeah, of course that's not fair. Okay, that's fine. And they understand that we're all just looking after each other. We're looking after our own businesses. Yeah. So I think personally, I've worked to get the right words to explain it to someone with no experience. And then that's what I'll send them. I know the AOI have some kind of, I think they have some kind of document that you can pass on or something that explains it. And I'm sure other people have. I'm sure there's other similar resources.
Well, just like you,
yeah.
I've kind of evolved my own little explanation of how it works. But when you're a beginner and you're just starting out, chances are you're going to get more offers from people that don't get it. So you have to find that way to explain it to people quite early on, so you don't get taken advantage of, I suppose, or not even that, but just accidentally get yourself into a difficult situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also about educating those beginners so that they know, so that they're not doing it wrong, or that kind of thing. I know some colleges do it and some colleges don't do it. So that could always be addressed to make sure a student's learning that side of things, and are they able to explain it? Are they confident with it that they could just go out there and tell people about it? Yeah.
Yeah, good. All right. Just scanning my list of questions there. I think I'm done.
Cool.
It's been really nice talking to you. Anything else you want to plug or talk about?
I don't. No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah. Have a look at my
How can
website.
people...
I launched a new website. Sorry, go on.
No, sorry. We must have a delay. We've been interrupting each other all the way through. How can people get involved with the next survey that you do, whenever that may be?
Well, it will be sometime in the new year. I think the best thing is probably to keep an eye on my Twitter. Will be kind of the first place to kind of like we'll be sharing about it, and just kind of keep an eye out. It's Ben Illustrator.
Ben.
Yeah.
This seems like a perfect time to wrap up if somebody's doing DIY in your studio.
Can you hear that? That's in the gallery. Sorry, they're installing something.
No, that's good. Hey, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
I hope we can talk more in person sometime.
Yeah, that would be good. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been great.
See ya. Thanks very much.